So President Trump has been not president for 2 days, and the mainstream media and so many people are acting like he never existed. They talk about impeachment. That's about it. Look, I know we have a new president, but Donald Trump changed the world. He changed American culture. He changed American politics. And this is totally bizarre for me that he's not still in office. And we're not hearing from him on Twitter, of course. But here's the deal. I hear he's relaxing and playing a lot of golf. He's done that before, but not under these circumstances in a long time where he's not needed somewhere. And I think it's probably pretty good for him, this kind of relaxation. Let's face it, he did not take a vacation basically in 4 years. He's said to think very well on the golf course. Yeah, that's where he gets some of his more creative impulses. I hope he's having a good time. He did say he'll be watching and listening and seeing what's happening. We may not hear from him for a while, but Mr. President, we are thinking of you and anxiously awaiting your next move. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is actually trying to get used to being the commander-in-chief. All right, this video went kind of viral there for a couple of reasons. A lot of folks were saying, well, why didn't Joe Biden salute? Here's the deal. The Marines don't salute him. They're holding the door. All right, watch this. And when you're president, guess what? You outrank everybody in the military, of course. You don't initiate a salute to somebody who doesn't outrank you. All right, that's actually pretty standard. Donald Trump got all this down first day in office, crisp salutes. And you'll notice here, the Marine is saluting him, and then he returns the salute. Just a little protocol thing. So Joe Biden didn't do anything wrong, but he did do something kind of weird. Again. Now, as to why he said that, I have no idea. I've heard the rumors that he had something in his ear, his mind or whatever, told him to do that. I don't know what's going on there. Joe does a lot of things that are off, let's face it. By the way, why do I know this stuff about saluting? Well, I did my time in the Marines, 9 years active duty, about 11 in the reserves, and there I am with my buddies in my dress blues. Folks, people have been talking about the military a lot on Capitol Hill. Keep in mind my experience. I have not been as shocked as other people about these pictures. A couple of things here. Number one, I've slept in all kinds of places for the Marine Corps overseas and in worse accommodations than this, actually. But here's the thing that actually really set me off about the troops, Capitol Hill, and how they were employed. And I quite frankly think overall they are being used to drive a political message home. There's Nancy Pelosi with the troops on Capitol Hill, staging them prior to the inauguration because of what happened on January 6th. We know what happened. It was awful, should not have happened. But having these troops, as conspicuous as they were, and having the security situation almost over the top, quite frankly, they were trying, I believe, to convey a message that Trump supporters were thinking about doing something bad at the inauguration. They really wanted to, I think, exaggerate the threat, make Trump supporters look bad, try to associate all of us with those horrible things that happened on January 6th. And their effort, quite frankly, seemed very coordinated.
We have more troops on the mall than we do today in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria combined.
More troops in Washington than in wars overseas.
D.C. is like a war zone right now with more troops than Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria combined.
There are more troops in Washington, D.C. than in Iraq and Afghanistan combined.
You think they got a talking points memo on that one? I'm pretty sure they did. Again, to convey the situation so dire that Trump supporters are so crazy, you needed all these troops to stop something bad from happening. And by the way, you know the pictures that actually I was taken aback by before the inauguration, all these guys in the Capitol. I think that was meant to shock us all a little bit that, oh, this is where we've come to. This is how bad the situation is. We need all of these troops. Again, what happened on January 6th was awful, and those responsible should be punished. But I sense that something political is happening here. Here's further evidence, by the way. Remember Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, when he wrote that op-ed over the summer? Because of all those crazy protests we were having, he said, send in the troops. One thing above all else will restore order to our streets, an overwhelming show of force to disperse, detain, and ultimately deter lawbreakers. And he was talking about the military. Guess what? Pretty reasonable idea. It's an idea that the Democrats actually made happen on January 20th when it served their purposes. When Tom Cotton came up with this pretty reasonable idea, you may remember, all hell broke loose. The left-leaning media said, how could Tom Cotton have said that? It should not even have been in the newspaper. People were saying that it was racist, that it put black lives in danger. Just an over-the-top reaction, even for just publishing that essay. Then Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer just snapped their fingers, and it happened. Again, military, they're great when they are protecting Democrats. They are a menace when they are protecting Donald Trump or private businesses that don't want to be looted. Here's the thing, folks. As we go forward under this Biden administration, I consider myself part of the opposition. All right, fair enough. You probably are on the same side, but I don't want to call it the resistance. Do you remember that? That was the big thing under Trump. Resist, resist, resist. It has actually both a positive and negative connotation. The negative part, well, it goes back to World War II. People who resisted the Nazi occupation. Now, they were heroes, but they were saboteurs. They took up arms like these French women. They blew up bridges. They wanted to stop Nazi government in France, and that's good. So here, I'm just opposing what Joe Biden says and does for the most part. I don't want to take down the systems of government, and neither do you. It's an important distinction that we on the right are sure to make. On the left, no, they just embrace resistance. Vive la resistance, right? Here's a problem. When you are coddled by the press, like the Biden people were, when you finally get power, you're really rusty because the press are starting to show signs of aggressiveness, and they're not ready.
Why weren't President Biden and all members of the Biden family masked at all times on federal lands last night if he signed an executive order that mandates masks on federal lands at all times?
At the inaugural
At the Lincoln Memorial, yes.
I think, Steve, he was celebrating an evening of a historic day in our country, and certainly he signed the mask mandate because it's a way to send a message to the American public about the importance of wearing masks, how it can save tens of thousands of lives. We take a number of COVID precautions, as you know, here in terms of testing, social distancing, mask wearing ourselves, as we do every single day. But I don't know that I have more for you on it than that.
Talk about making it up while you go along. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Again, if they had a real campaign and reporters treated them aggressively like they do Republicans, I think she would have been better at handling that. It gets a little bit better, actually.
But as Joe Biden often talks about, it is not just important the example of power, but the power of our example. Was that a good example for people who are watching who might not pay attention normally?
Well, Steve, I think the power of his example is also the message he sends by signing 25 executive orders, including almost half of them related to COVID. The requirements that we're all under every single day here to ensure we're sending that message to the public. Yesterday was a historic moment in our history. He was inaugurated as president of the United States. He was surrounded by his family. We take a number of precautions, but I think we have bigger issues to worry about at this moment in time.
Wait a second. Wearing a mask for the first 100 days of his administration, that was the biggest thing. They kept on pushing that. Now they're blowing it off and saying you don't have to wear a mask when you celebrate. Is that what I heard? And what else did Joe say about example, like the reporter mentioned?
And will lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example.
Sounds great, but once again, empty slogans. A little while later, he signed that executive order. Everybody must wear a mask on federal property. And Joe shows up to some famous federal property, the Lincoln Memorial, without a mask. And he's walking, of course, all over the White House without a mask. Again, just a lot of symbolism, just a lot of words, certainly not leading by example. But some of those executive orders, there is some substance there, some thrust, and some of it actually is pretty scary. Andrew Sullivan points this out. There's something called critical theory. Are you familiar with this? Look, everybody believes in equality, right? Everybody, no matter your race, color, creed, whatever, everybody deserves a chance in America, and no one should be discriminated against. But some of these orders that Joe is signing here, it says that if you are part of a group that's been discriminated against in the past, you may need an extra advantage. He writes that for Joe, for President Biden, race and identity are everything, and that America itself is inherently, from top to bottom, a white supremacist country. It means giving the named identity groups a specific advantage in treatment by the federal government over other groups in order to make up for historic injustice and systemic oppression. That we must pay for the sins of others, even if we had nothing to do with slavery or segregation. This is where it gets very, very slippery and potentially very, very ugly, and it certainly isn't unifying. But back to unity for a second. This is simple, and Joe, I believe, still has the power to do it. President Biden, if you were to come out right now and tell Congress to drop the case against President Trump, wow, that would go a long way. President Trump has 75 million admirers, followers, people who voted for him. We like him still. If you were to drop this bogus case, that would say a lot. The other thing, especially those of us in conservative media, tell big tech to stay out of it. Joe, you've got some clout now. You've got some authority. Use it for the right purposes, huh? What do you say?
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.